Hi, I'm host Sophie Morgan, inviting you to listen to Equal To, a new podcast about achieving disability equality. With the Paralympic Games happening in Tokyo, we're asking, where should the story go next? Equal To is brought to you by the Emmy Award-winning team that created Rising Phoenix and made possible by the support of Procter & Gamble. Listen to Equal To, that's Equal, T-O-O, part of Seneca's Conversations on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Geico knows there are many reasons why you ride. From the exciting adventure of the daily commute to the peace of mind that Geico always has your back with 24/7 access to claim service and legendary customer service. But Pamela Mund had one reason in particular.
My skin is extremely averse to most fabrics, except for the soft, buttery feeling of leather. Thankfully, I found my clan of leather lovers in the biking community. It's been life-changing.
Geico Motorcycle. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Amazon Music and Wondery present Smartless. It's called Smartless as in less smart. Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes host this hilarious weekly podcast. Every week, one host invites a celebrity guest, and the other two have no idea who. The guest list has included major stars like LeBron James, Aquafina, Conan O'Brien, Ryan Reynolds, Billie Eilish, and Seth Rogen. What happens is genuinely improvised and authentic conversation filled with laughter and newfound knowledge to feed this smartless mind. Download the Amazon Music app so you can listen to new episodes of Smartless 1 week before it's available everywhere.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Well, as I've said many times before, sports are the greatest reality show invented. You could script everything but the outcome, and that's why this time of year is so much fun. And on that note, welcome back to another award-winning edition of Straight Outta Vegas, the weekend adaptation. I'm Bernie Fratto. We're coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Tonight, we preview the Pac-12, and we'll give you one key stat on each team that you can tuck away when it comes to betting on these teams as the season goes on. About 15 minutes. Special guest tonight. You hear him weeknights from 7 to 11 p.m. Pacific, along with his best friend, Jason Smith. It's Mike Harmon, a.k.a. Fantasy League Guru, to help get you ready for your Fantasy Football League draft. After Bruin Finley's update, we'll talk about the latest stories swirling around Las Vegas, and we'll catch up on some NFL developments as well. And, of course, we close down the show with Mackinac Sports to stretch your mind and give you the kind of data you'll only find on this show. Sports are entertainment, but they're more than that. They're a shared experience. As such, people want to talk about them. You've come to the right place. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. This is Straight Outta Vegas, the pregame show you always wanted. And as they say in Les Steckel, Minnesota, it's going to be lit. UCLA, 44-10 today. Nice opener for Chip Kelly. By the way, prior to that, he'd lost 6 straight non-conference games, so they get off the schneid. But it sort of begs the question, what the hell happened to the Pac-12? At one time, they were a premier conference. UCLA, they strolled into SEC country and whipped the likes of Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama. Oregon, Washington, and UCLA were national powerhouses. Stanford and the Arizona schools were always very respectable. And Pac-12 always fared well in bowl games against other Power 5 conferences. It's so bad now, the Pac-12 has gone 8-17 straight up, 6-19 against the spread in bowl games in the last 3 years, with only 3 wins by more than 6 points. Worse, they're a paltry 3-14 straight up, 1-16 against the spread in bowl games against foes coming off a win with the same span. So you put them on a level playing field, and they have not done well. It's so bad since the college football was introduced. Check that. The college football playoff system was introduced. The Pac-12 has just made 2 appearances, going 1-2, and they failed to appear in 3 of the last 5 seasons, missing out on 4 straight years. Not good. So the long and the short of it is the Pac-12, nowhere to go but up. They got athletes out there. They just keep ending up in other schools. And, you know, as long as USC is down, it seems to seemingly drag the rest of the conference with it. But maybe there'll be some new blood that'll turn things around, like Arizona's Jedd Fisch, right? Unlike the numerous head coaching changes we've witnessed in the past, well, Pac-12 has just one newbie this year. It's Arizona's Jed Fish. So Fish replaces Kevin Sumlin, who was sort of a dead man walking following last week. You know, they were winless last year. And in 3 seasons with Arizona, Sumlin failed to, register a winning season while going 9-20, 9-18-1 against the spread. So, look, Arizona enters the 2021 campaign with a 12-game losing streak. Let's start with the North Division. Random, Cal. We're going to start with Cal, all right? Now, it's safe to say that last year was brutal because of COVID, but no one was hit harder than Cal. The Cal Bears, they opened up, they were 8-5 the year before. They had their first bowl season in 4 years, 18 returning starters last year, including their quarterback. But, really, they had a real bad issue with COVID. To top it off, 7 seniors from last year's team opted to use their free eligibility year this season. So Cal's got nowhere to go but up. They do return 18 starters, but, they're not considered one of the great teams in the conference. I will say this, though. Here's a stat you'll like. The Bears, they've won 6 consecutive games against non-conference Power 5 opponents. That's impressive. All right, Oregon probably, I could tell you, is going to be the class of the conference, and their coach, Mario Cristobal, he's 12-4 against the spread versus undefeated opponents. Well, he's going to get one next week against Ohio State, including 9-1 in the last 10 games. Oregon, again, had a issue with COVID last year. However, I think they're poised to certainly get to the Pac-12 championship game, if not beyond, but it's going to come down to that game against Ohio State. Oregon State, interestingly enough, they have 10 starters back on offense, 9 starters back on defense, and you never know how they're going to do. They won, last year as a 13-point underdog in the Civil War against Oregon. They lose a quarterback who was their linchpin, Jake Luton. And, that's always concerning. And the Beavers, they fell from number 12 in the nation last year in turnover ratio to number 84. So Oregon does not have much margin of error. Check that, Oregon State. I don't know that you can pencil them in to do anything spectacular this year. Stanford, again, here's a stat you like about Stanford. They're 17-2 straight up, 15-4 against the number in games when coming off a loss as a favorite. What that tells me is David Shaw, who I have a lot of respect for, I think he's a very good coach. Stanford typically does not play two bad games in a row, all right? And they had the number 2 recruiting class in the Pac-12 this year, and they moved up 16 spots over the 5-year average. So David Shaw is recruiting, right? Now, they've had a tough patch the last 2 seasons. They've had just 4 wins each of the 2 years. However, the bottom line is I'm a believer in David Shaw. So as the season goes on, Stanford's win total is only 4.5. I'm not big on betting season win totals, but I will say this. I think Stanford will be a dog in many games this year, and typically their value as a dog. So just keep an eye on them. Not that they're going to go and do anything crazy this year or win the national championship or go to the playoffs, but I think they'll be valuable as a dog. One of the most intriguing teams is Washington, the Huskies. They bring back 10 starters on offense. They are believed to have the best offensive line in all of college football. They average 328 pounds per man, and they've recruited well. And a lot of the players that Chris Peterson recruited before he left are there now. Their coach, I don't know much about their coach, Jimmy Lake. We're going to find out. We're going to find out week 2 when they go to Michigan. They're a 3-point underdog, and sharp people I know like Washington in that game. They bring back a lot of experience on both sides of the ball, 18 starters, including 10 on offense in that offensive line. And they have a pass rusher by the name of Zion Tupuola-Fatui. And that's going to – he's a stud. The problem is he tore his Achilles. He may miss the season. But Washington, another team that's fairly consistent, they finished 3rd or higher in Pac-12 scoring defense every year in the last 7 years. Again, keep an eye on them as they head to Michigan in week 2. Washington State, well, the Cougars, they had a crazy year last year. It was their first year without Mike Leach, and the results spoke for themselves. They only played 4 games. They only won 1. But I do like their new coach, Nick Rolovich. He comes over from Hawaii. Give him time to implement his system. They're up against it right now. I will say, though, that he has always been an offensive-minded coach, more so than a defensive-minded coach. Case in point, he's only 4-23 straight up, 3-24 against the spread, anytime his team scores fewer than 28 points. So you look to the North Division, to me it's all Oregon. The South Division, Arizona, Arnie's Wildcats, they do bring back 17 starters, but they are, they've got a lot of rebuilding. They're a 9-point underdog against, BYU here coming up. They really had issues last year on defense in almost every one of their games. First of all, they were -9 in net turnovers. Terrible. They also surrendered with every opponent they played. They allowed either their season high or second high yards in every game but one, and Arizona was outscored by nearly 23 points per game. Nowhere to go but up. Arizona State. Now, the Sun Devils, keep an eye on them because they're pretty good as a short favorite. They're 15-2 as conference home dogs of more than 5 points, and they're not bad as a short favorite. So this is a team that, led the nation in turnover margin per game last year, and they do return all 11 starters on defense. Not sure how Arizona State's going to do, but their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, he's back with, I believe, the best running attack, possibly in the Pac-12, and the best Pac-12 scoring defense. Arizona State could be a real sleeper this year. The trouble is they're in there with Colorado. Colorado is a team that has high expectations. You never know if their expectations are going to be met. Last year, their new head coach, Carl Durrell, inherited, a team that had been really scuffling the last couple of years. But Colorado typically has started fast in the last 4 years, 14-2 in the first 4 games in the last 4 years. They do have to you go up against Texas A&M on September 11th. Sharp people I know, like Colorado was a dog today. You saw UCLA today. 10 starters back on offense, 10 starters back on defense, and Chip Kelly. Maybe things will kick in. They've been kind of bullies. UCLA, they're 28-1 against sub-500 college football opponents in the last few years. The game to watch that they've got circled at Stanford, there'll be a dog most likely. UCLA can't rule them out, but between them and Arizona State, it's going to be a situation where how well can you perform when it matters most. A key game UCLA has next week. They host LSU. The line was 4.5, down to 3. USC, well, year 2 of the Keaton Slovis, Graham Harrell connection. Well, it lived up to the hype last season. They were 5-1 in 6 games. They're loaded with a ton of talent. Okay, the main disappointment was losing to Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. But after the loss, the Trojans opted out of the bowl game. They had a ton of COVID-19 concerns. Last year was a throwaway year. But I would say this: if USC was a stock, you'd buy them. I think they're on the way up. One game to watch this year, they're at Notre Dame October 23rd. There'll be a dog. Sharpies I know are already on USC in that game. All right. I think the Pac-12 this year is, let me not forget about Utah, by the way. The real key to Utah's success has been simple. Kyle Whittingham, he's improved his school's recruiting dramatically more than anybody, almost in the entire nation, right? I mean, we're talking about moving up. They rank these things. He's moved up 31 spots in the last 5 years, and he's got a quarterback named Cameron Rising. He won the starting job last year but missed spring camp with injuries. They also have a transfer quarterback from Baylor named Charlie Brewer. Utah is always going to be competitive because they play defense. And one beauty of Utah, and this is key in handicapping football, if you outgain your opponent, we all know the old adage about not, turning the ball over and winning the turnover battle. If you win the turnover battle, you win about 70% of your games. Outgaining your opponent is a big thing too. The overall yardage winner in the Utah games last 2 seasons has been Utah, 18 out of 19 games. So clearly the talent is spread to the south. I think it's going to be between Washington and Oregon in the north. It'll be between USC, Arizona State, and I would say Utah in the South. Well, with a wink and a nod to UCLA. Can you prove me wrong, Chip? Who knows? I'd like nothing better to see the Pac-12 finally rise up after all these years of being really sort of relegated to being perceived as a second-rate conference. They're not, but performance-wise, there's no other way to characterize it. You know, Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply. Coming up, well, if your fantasy draft is coming up, and I bet it is, you're going to want to stay tuned right here because Mike Harmon, a.k.a. Swollen Dome. Find him on Twitter at Swollen Dome. Of course, he does a great podcast with Dan Beyer having to do with fantasy football. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight so you can get ready for your fantasy draft. I'm Bernie Fratto coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. This is the pregame show you always wanted, so don't go away. You're listening to Straight Outta Vegas.
Straight Outta Vegas! The great Bernie Fratto, folks.
Fox Sports Radio has the best sports talk lineup in the nation. Catch all of our shows at foxsportsradio.com. And within the iHeartRadio app, search FSR to listen live.
Hey, it's me, Rob Parker. Check out my weekly MLB podcast, Inside the Parker, for 22 minutes of piping hot baseball talk featuring the biggest names and newsmakers in the sport. Whether you believe in analytics or the eye test, we've got all the bases covered. New episodes drop every Thursday, so do yourself a favor and listen to Inside the Parker with Rob Parker on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
It's crazy how much we have to pay for outdated, impersonal healthcare, and even crazier that we all just accept it. It's time to face facts. Healthcare is backwards. Luckily, there's Forward, a new approach to primary care that's surprisingly personal and refreshingly straightforward. Forward never makes you feel like just another patient. Backed by top-rated doctors and the latest tech, Forward gives you access to personalized care whenever you need it. Using in-depth genetic analysis and real-time blood work, Forward's top-rated doctors provide you with in-depth insights to better understand your genetics, mental, and physical health. They then create custom, easy-to-understand plans to help guide you to achieving long-term health. With Forward, you get unlimited in-person visits with your doctor and access to care anytime via the Forward app, all for one flat monthly fee. It's time to stop accepting backwards healthcare and start moving your health forward. Visit GoForward.com today to learn more. That's GoForward.com.
Veterans, you may have earned a variety of VA benefits. Did you know VA can help you further your education and pursue professional training? The Home Loan Guarantee Program can help you buy, repair, or adapt a home. VA provides housing support if you find yourself homeless or at risk of homelessness. And don't forget world-class health care. Learn more about these and other VA benefits. Visit choose.va.gov.
CareerBuilder is made for people who have that thing. You know, those superpowers that make you good at your job, the skills you bring to work. And CareerBuilder knows those skills make you right for other jobs too. Higher paying jobs with benefits. Jobs you never thought of trying. Are you a people person? Work from home as a customer service rep? Are you organized and like driving? Become a delivery driver. You have the skills it takes, and CareerBuilder.com has the jobs to get you hired fast. Visit CareerBuilder.com.
We're back on Straight Outta Vegas, the pregame show you always wanted. I'm Bernie Fratto coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Let's welcome in our guest. You hear him Monday through Friday, 7 to 11 p.m. Pacific, along with his best friend, Jason Smith, and, of course, also on the very popular podcast, I Want Your Flex with Dan Beyer. Say hello to fantasy football guru Mike Harmon. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Good. In a short 6.5 hours, I'll be getting after it with Jeff Schwartz for 4 hours, barking about all things NFL. But what's going on?
That's right. You got your Sunday morning, 6 to 10.
It doesn't stop.
So fantasy drafts are right around the corner here, and let's begin with this. What is your philosophy, Mike, with respect to overall position and draft strategy in terms of priority?
Priority is, for me, unless I'm at the back end of the first round where things start getting a little bit hairy. As long as I'm near the front of the pack, I'm still drafting a bell cow running back because there's so few of them and so many split positions, tertiary guys and goal line vultures, not to mention the number of quarterbacks that screw you over by taking the mail themselves in and around the goal line. So, you got to position yourself well. And then obviously settings matter a great deal, right? When we look at PPR leagues, getting one of those top-notch players at the position will always serve you well. Injury notes are always there and concerns are always there, but they still got to play the games. But when you look at it, and it comes up quite a bit, it's like in the end you're still playing at least two running backs, right? Your most settings are one quarterback, two running backs, a couple of wide receivers, and then you probably will have a flex position, maybe a super flex, but that means you're getting deep into the running back position, and that drop-off between number 1 and 24 or number 1 and 36 is stark.
Mike, just to clarify for our audience, you weren't implying that we draft and kill Harry in the first round. You mentioned Harry. I just want to clarify that. Also, A+ to you for using the word tertiary, folks. What that means is not primary or secondary, it's tertiary. That's why you want to listen to this guy.
I assume everybody's got either a dictionary or that we're the most erudite, listeners and speakers that we could possibly piece together. That's it. I'm elevating things here on Fox Sports Radio.
Fair enough. No question. You've elevated the zeitgeist already in the first 90 seconds. Mike, who seems to be the consensus number 1 overall pick in most leagues?
It's still going to be Christian McCaffrey, even coming off the injury, even with questions about the Carolina offensive line, even with questions about Sam Darnold. You just go back to 2 years ago and what a monster he was, standing high and tall, a good 100 points more than any other performer. Because, again, you start comparing the quarterbacks, it's an unfair comparison because the drop-off between number 1 and number 12 is running around maybe 5 points per week, which is far less than when we get into those PPR base at the top of the running back position.
Talking with Mike Harmon. You hear him Monday through Friday, 7 to 11, with Jason Smith, and, of course, on his podcast, Apple Podcast with Dan Byer, I Want Your Flex. We're talking Fantasy League Draft. Where does Tyreek Hill fit in the first round? I've actually heard some leagues might draft him number 1 overall. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, look, everybody's got their flavor. Right? I mean, if you do a giant graph of all the drafts in the world, you're going to have a lot of number 1s. You're going to have a lot of folks that are just fans of a particular team, and they're going to draft completely off the grid. For me, Tyreek Hill is a guy that he's certainly upper-tier wide receiver. Now, to draft him number 1, I have to wonder what else is going on in the league setting? Are there keepers involved? All of those kind of things. But certainly he's a guy that benefits from a massive offense. Patrick Mahomes doing what he does, the retooled offensive line, the expectation of more greatness from Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield, teaming him with Kelsey and Harmon and doing all the personnel stuff. But for me, I'm wondering about a regression potentially on touchdowns, and when we're looking at wide receivers, an ebb and flow, right? We're playing best ball from a rankings perspective. Yeah, I think the aggregate is going to be there, but on a week-to-week basis, there might be some smallish weeks in there, and all we can try to predict on a weekly basis is how much of an opportunity, i.e. targets/touches, are going to be available. And for me, Tyreek Hill wouldn't fit the bill to be a number 1 overall pick.
Fair enough. I agree with you. Now, speaking of week to week and progressing, which players have you identified are poised for a breakout performance from last season?
Well, it gets difficult, right? Because we start using the term sleeper, and there's so much coverage of this anymore that there's really no surprises unless that undrafted guy that made the back end of the roster is suddenly thrust into a big position, which happens right now. Austin Eckler is a fantasy hero after being an undrafted free agent back in the day with the Chargers. But when we start looking a little deeper, the injury to Dobbins means more for Gus Edwards. Well, does that mean more potentially for Justice Hill? Is there a trickle-down effect to where maybe you can find some value late at the running back position? A guy like Sony Michel, who gets bounced out of a crowded situation in New England, comes to the Rams, and since they did make a trade and gave up some considerable assets, given the injury history of Darrell Henderson, the potential is there for him to come from undrafted, if you got into on your drafts early, to a late-round pickup who suddenly finds himself as an RB2. I'm partial to Zach Moss in Buffalo. I think he's a better back in and around the goal line, handling some mail there for the Buffalo Bills, who should have a prolific offense. So I think there's value for him. He's being drafted as a RB4 right now in that 37 to 45 range. Not a lot of people impressed with anything other than the arm strength of Josh Allen. You go down the wide receiver list. I mean, I see some guys that are top 10, 15 players show up on these lists, Bernie, and it drives me insane. It's like, you're not fooling anybody. These guys are stars. You got to go deeper. We're trying to find comeback players, guys. Draft picks, guys like Deebo Samuel coming off injury. Once Trey Lance is in there full time, whenever that happens, whether he deposes Jimmy Garoppolo or Garoppolo gets hurt, opportunity will be there. Laviska Shenault, once Trevor Lawrence just decides 1,000, 2,000, throw the ball up in the air because that offensive line's going to get him killed, and you just have a guy run under it. Potential there. Jalen Waddle there in Miami. He's a rookie, and rookie wide receivers, a bit of a crapshoot, but not as much as they used to be. Opportunity there. And then if you're the gutsy guy, maybe eventually everybody kisses and makes up, and Michael Thomas is suddenly back on the field. Doesn't mean that you go and reach for him too early, but where he's being drafted right now, if he shows up for the second half of the season as even 80% of the guy we once knew, and Jameis Winston still winging it downfield, yeah, there's better than WR5 potential there.
Now, that's really heady strategy. You pick up the guys who are under the radar, and all of a sudden they reemerge week 6, and you say, why didn't I think of that? Wrapping it up with Mike Harmon here. You hear him Monday night, 7 to 11 p.m. with Jason Smith. Of course, also his podcast, I Want Your Flex, with Dan Byer, specializing in fantasy football. You'll hear him back on these airwaves in about 6.5 hours, hosting his Sunday morning football show. Mike, the inevitable question: what's the earliest you draft a kicker or a defense, and how critical are those two positions to winning your league?
Well, there is some weight to it. You know, folks kind of laugh about it, but there are defenses and certainly kickers when we start talking about the big leg guys, you know, the Butkers and the Zerlines and Tyler Basses of the world that, you know, when we're talking about a normal scoring system, if they can bomb them in from 50-plus, I mean, that's always been the specialty of a guy like Matt Prater, who gives you that opportunity. Now, there's going to be games where they're shut out, and that's where the strategy comes in of, do you play the Ronco? Shout out Ron Popeil, rest in peace. Other guy, but I mean, it was years. You know, Stephen Gostkowski with the New England Patriots, where you didn't know if he was going to get a ton of field goal opportunities, but he wasn't going to get skunked because they were going to put up at least 21 points. So you were getting 3 PATs, so you weren't going to have a zero. And then you have a guy like Tucker, who's, you know, the old slam-down football guy, right? The super toe toys that we had as kids, and you basically break your hand trying to kick field goals with it. That's what he is. So you have opportunity. For defenses, you know, when you're starting to bank, because you're also including special teams there, when you start banking on big returns, and we know how much the return game has been changed the last few years, that's not really going to – that's an added bonus, right? Maybe that's a tiebreaker that you start looking at the viability and your excitement about a return guy coming in. I know some people like, I'm going to get the Giants because Tony is going to be the guy that breaks. I'm like, all right, good luck with that. Some of the best arguments I've ever gotten into with people are related to special teams for fantasy purposes. But when we know the Rams, we know the Steelers, Ravens, Washington, that's your upper tier. They're gonna have pile up sacks, and in theory, pile up turnovers. Beyond that, you know, I'm usually playing the matchup game because we can pick the teams that we think are going to be dog food offenses right now. In about 3 weeks, we're going to know that for certain. So I'll play the waiver wire and just get ahead of the game and just drop and add as I need to. It adds to the free agent acquisition budget, right? A bigger pot for everybody to play for, and it also puts me in a better position to go and beat up on those teams who didn't invest on offensive lines and that their quarterbacks are sitting ducks.
Good stuff, Mike. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on tonight. I know it was a really busy night for you.
Nah, we just keep moving, brother. It's all good. I got enough coffee running through me. I'll probably stay up and go straight through the show. Let's go.
Let's go. I'll just stay right up all night, and I'll listen to you at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks so much, Mike.
Be good, brother. We'll see you.
That is Mike Harmon. You hear him Monday through Friday, 7 to 11, with his best friend, Jason Smith. And, of course, on his podcast with Dan Beyer, the man for all seasons. The podcast is called I Want Your Flex. They do a great job of covering fantasy football and get you ready for your fantasy draft. Coming up, lots of doings here in Las Vegas. It is busy again. I'll bring you up to date on some things you might get a kick about. But first, hey, well, let's go to the man. He's got a fantasy team, too. It's simply called Swipe Right. It's brewed friendly with the latest.
Eventually I found somebody by swiping right, so it ended up working out for me. There is a success story out there for anybody who is looking for that special someone. So we were talking about the NFL. You and Mike were. And now, Bernie, we do have college football that began on Saturday, and it's regular season play. And how about Nick Starkel, the former Texas A&M QB, 4 touchdown throws, 1 score on the ground for him as he leads San Jose State to a 45-14 drubbing of Southern Utah. And then there was the big showcase game, which was on Fox TV earlier on Saturday, where Illinois took it to Nebraska 30-22. At one point, it was 30-9, and then the Cornhuskers made it close. Never could get over the hump. And after the game, Huskers head coach Scott Frost, quote, "It was all a guessing game for us," close quote, which is probably right what you want to hear if you're a fan of that team, knowing that your head coach doesn't really know what was going on. UCLA blows out Hawaii 44-10. Zach Charbonnet, the Michigan transfer, had 3 touchdowns on the ground for the Bruins. And the Rainbow Warriors, here's a stat line that will stand out. 21 carries for 26 rushing yards in the game, and they burned all 3 of their timeouts in the first quarter. If that didn't signal something, I don't know what did. Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins will have tests on his left knee on Sunday after being carted off in Saturday's preseason win for the Ravens, 37-3 against the Washington football team. Cortland Sutton had a TD catch in a Broncos 17-12 victory over the Rams. Tom Brady, 11 of 14 passing, 154 yards and a touchdown as the Buccaneers with a win against the Texans 23-16. Justin Fields had 1 score in a Bears 27-24 W against the Titans. Alex Collins, the running back for the Seahawks, trying to make that final roster here, had 89 yards of total offense along with a score as the Seahawks blanked the Chargers 27-0. Just a couple notes from baseball. The Dodgers get it done against the Rockies 5-2. Will Smith with a 2-run single in the 8th to break up that tie. The Giants staple the Braves 5-0. Logan Webb now with 7 consecutive wins on the mound. The Twins upstage the Brewers 6-4. Milwaukee with 3 straight losses. And the Angels demonize the Padres 10-2. Jared Walsh, 3 hits and 3 RBI at the dish, which sounds, as I send it back to you, Bernie, like one of your games when you were at the plate. 3 hits, 3 RBI. That's typical Bernie Fratto, as I send it back to the man in Vegas.
Friendly scorekeepers always help me out, Brian. You know?
Yes.
That was a hit, not an error. All right, thanks, buddy. By the way, that Nebraska, you open up with that score. I don't know what happened to Scott Frost. They'd be better off with Jack Frost. This team just looks terrible. They look undisciplined, sloppy. They make mistakes. They commit penalties. Other than that, future's bright. All right, I speak of that because we're off and running in some betting, college football betting. That was my favorite play today. Illinois +7. You saw how that worked out. Speaking of action here in Las Vegas, in the month of July, casinos raked in $1.36 billion, setting a new Las Vegas record. And the preseason in the NFL this year, even though there are only 3 games, the biggest handle in preseason in NFL history. Why? I don't know. A bounce back from COVID, supply and demand, 3 games instead of 4. People were in a rush to get down. People have more information now than ever. So the old adage, you must be a degenerate if you bet the NFL preseason, just simply isn't true. Because now as you can see, some coaches play their starters, some coaches want to win, some don't care as much. Look at Baltimore, 20 in a row now. They won today 37-3. Turns out they tied Vince Lombardi's record of 20 in a row. So don't tell me that John Harbaugh doesn't want to win NFL preseason games, and if you backed him, you were 3-0 another year. These are things you're going to find out in the preseason that don't happen in the regular season. By the way, speaking of the regular season, momentous occasion here in Las Vegas, a week from next Monday night, or is it 2 weeks from next Monday night? Excuse me. The Raiders will play their first ever NFL regular season game. They're hosting the Baltimore Ravens. What's the significance? We know it's sold out. In the aftermarket, Vivid Seats is reporting that of the top 5 NFL games this year in terms of ticket demand, 4 of them are Raiders games. And one of the top games of that group involves the Chicago Bears visiting the Las Vegas Raiders, of which in the aftermarket, 48% of those tickets were purchased by Chicago fans. So I know that the Raiders will hope to have a good home field advantage, but you're going to see a lot of visiting teams with their fans here as well, too, because they make it out of a weekend junket. Speaking of other bets, we're starting to observe what I call notable long shot bets trickling in, what I call needle in the haystack bets, shooting BBs in the moon. Why would you bet $1,000 on Jacksonville to win the Super Bowl? When you get them at 151 odds, that'd be something if that happened. I don't like their chances. $1,000 on UCLA to win the national title. Currently, you get them at 500 to 1. That'd pay a cool $500,000. That was bet right here in Las Vegas at the Superbook. How about $2,500 on Michigan to make it to the college football playoff? You get them at 20 to 1. Again, long shot. Now, folks are betting, Spencer Rattler to win the Heisman Trophy, but here's a guy, if you're feeling saucy, 50 to 1, Matt Corral, the Ole Miss quarterback. Somebody put $4,000 on him to win $200,000. And it should be worth noting, I think Jason McIntyre pointed this out a couple years ago. The top 2 or 3 favorites never win the Heisman Trophy. So something to watch, right? I don't know that I put $4,000 on it, but somebody did. The Circa contest has 2 incredible contests here. It's the Department of Redundancy Department. I'm at the Circa Sportsbook. They've put up an unprecedented $10 million in guaranteed prize money for their 2 NFL handicapping contests. Each one only costs $1,000 to enter. And interestingly enough, right now, because of the low number of entrants, they're looking at about a $7.2 million overlay, which means they don't currently have enough signups to cover the guarantee. They will, of course, cover the guarantee if they fall short, but this could mean better opportunity for contestants. Both combined need well over 4,000 entrants to get up and make that money even. So the long and the short of it is that you might have better odds if you decide to get involved in either the Circa Million 3, where you pick, I think, 5 or 6 NFL games every week, or the Circa Survivor, and you know what Survivor contests are. One final thing. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to this. You can make fun of it if you want, but Jake Paul fights Tyron Woodley tomorrow night, 5 o'clock Pacific. Well, that's when the event starts. I don't think the main event will go off for 2 or 3 hours after that, of course. But currently, Jake Paul, minus 175, is getting a ton of action. He's the prohibitive favorite to beat former UFC fighter Tyron Woodley. Currently get him at plus 160. Jake Paul's camp, interestingly, negotiated an automatic rematch if he loses. One of the other prop bets, fight to not go the distance, 12 to 1. Now, I will say this. I don't know if that's a good bet or not, but Tyron Woodley has proven in his career to be a very patient fighter. The fight is only 8 rounds, and it's only 2-minute rounds. So if Woodley takes it to the distance and wins by decision somehow, he's plus 1,800. That would be a nice payday. I actually think Jake Paul's going to win tomorrow. Full disclosure, I'm not betting it. I'm not advising anybody bet it. I don't care. You do what you want to do. But it's not a bet I'm giving out because I'm not involved in that. Speaking of bets, coming up, you know them, you love them, you can't live without them. Mackenzie Rivers, Mackin on Sports. We'll talk about how one position in football, when you reduce their continuity, can certainly affect their ability to win and cover the spread. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. This is the pregame show you always wanted. Don't go away. You're listening to Straight Out of Vegas.
Straight Out of Vegas! The great Bernie Fratto, folks.
To show you how easy it is to file a claim with Geico, we hired a soap opera star.
Gracious me, my car has storm damage and I've had to file a claim. Could it possibly get worse? Will my claims team leave me for someone else? Someone less intense?
No. Actually, when you file a claim with Geico, you get your own dedicated claims team who promises to stay with you throughout the process.
Oh, I've never known such loyalty. I can't wait for the second season.
Geico. Great service without all the drama.
Good afternoon. Would you like to try a free sample of our double fudge brownie?
Oh, sure. That's very good. I'll just take one more, just to be sure. Yep, still very good.
Some things never change, like never being able to take just one free sample. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
Is that macadamia nut I taste? Let me take one more.
Sir.
Yeah, I thought so.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Why is it the best wireless deals require a trade-in? Right now at T-Mobile, we're getting rid of the trade-in headache. Switch and get the epic iPhone 12 with 5G on us. Get it on Magenta Max with unlimited premium data. No trade-in required.
Check out this great 4K video I took of us. I even posted it with 5G way out here.
That's right, a new iPhone 12 on us. No worrying about having a phone that qualifies. You can keep your current phone or pass it down. Seriously, no trade-in required.
Look at this cool photo of my victory dance.
Wow, I didn't know you were that flexible.
It's that easy. Unlimited premium data, iPhone 12 on us, and no trade-in required. You won't get that from anyone else. T-Mobile, the leader in 5G.
Activate up to 4K or video streams at 480p. Phone via 24 credits plus tax for well-qualified buyers. Contact us before canceling to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. Up to 2 per account. T-Mobile is the largest 5G network and named fastest by OpenSignal Awards and USA 5G User Experience Report July 2021. Details at T-Mobile.com.
We're back on Straight Outta Vegas, the pregame show you always wanted. I'm Bernie Fratto, coming to you live from the Las Vegas Fox Sports Radio studios. Before I go any further, I want to thank my broadcast team back in Los Angeles, and yes, they'll be with me all the way through till 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern. That would be Brian Finley, Chris Perfett, and Bull Benson. By the way, quick shout-out to listener Trent Light. He listens all the way from Australia, sends us this tweet. And I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I'm smoking good, I'm sipping. If these
can dance all night long,
they're classy, well, that's the class I'm skipping. That's Lil Wayne, man. I know my Lil Wayne. Am I right, Mackenzie?
Wow, you schooled me on that one. I was just listening to Drought 3 this weekend, but I do not remember that particular Wayne lyric. That's the thing about Wayne. Everyone has a song of his because he released like 600 songs in like 4 years. So everyone has one joint that's just their jam that we may not know.
Hey, man, I'm just a hip hipster, man. I know my Lil Wayne, okay? I know my Lil Wayne. All right, you know him, you love him, can't live without him. Time for Mackenzie Rivers, Mackin' on Sports. He'll be with us at the end of the hour all the way through till 3 a.m. tonight. All right, Mackenzie, you teased it. Here's the situation. There's a position group that if you shuffle them around or you replace them like chess pieces, it's not always good, especially if you're trying to win games in the National Football League.
Move is one, like the Jamaican bobsled team is the name of the game. Cohesion. And when you talk about betting, it's talking about what people are not looking at is where you're going to find the most value. Now, I'll just pose this question to you to start. What is the least sexy position out of the 22 on a professional football field, Bernie?
The least sexy is probably center.
The big uglies, yes, right in the center, right in the middle. The defensive and offensive line is often neglected, particularly the offensive line, because the defensive line, you know, a lot of defensive linemen will be drafted very high. Think of Clowney, Donald, Mack, all drafted within the top 5 of that year, because defensive line are known, their athleticism and what they're able to do is more known versus the offensive line, because the offensive line, I mean, if you look at Wonderlic scores of centers and guards, best in the league usually, it's a very thinking man's game. You know, a lot like sumo wrestling, you know, you got to get very particular with your craft when you're down there. And what we see is year over year, the last 5 years especially, if you keep the same offensive line, you do better than expectations. This was shocking to me. So part of a database project we're doing, getting all the different historical key performance indicators, we call it, into one spreadsheet. Offensive line is jumping off the page the more work we do. So if you just look at just the raw numbers, teams that return 2.5 or less offensive linemen, so less than half of their offensive line is back year over year, those teams miss expectations versus their win total. Their Vegas win total, you can bet every team, Are they going to win 7, 8, that expectation? They miss it by almost 1 win per game, 0.9. There's been 35 instances of this, big turnover at the offensive line, lose by almost 1 win per time. But we expanded it. We said, well, not all linemen are created equal. Some linemen are great, some men are not that good. And like you said, the center is one of the most fundamental positions into the decision-making of every offense. So if we said, okay, let's add a half lost offensive lineman if a center's missed, and add another one if they're elite, if they're top 30 in the league. If you do that adjustment, there's been 47 occurrences the last 5 years where the team released or retained less than half of their offensive line with those adjustments. Those teams are missing out by 1.2 wins per season. They're 13 and 42.
Right, hold that thought, because I think the Raiders fall into that category, if I'm not mistaken.
The Raiders lost their center, Roy Hudson. They do have enough offensive linemen. I think they have 3 to miss out on this particular category. But there's one more filter that I think even adds a little more dimension to this, which is new coaches. New coaches have a lot to worry about when they have to bring back or create new offensive lines and new structures. They've historically done terrible. Let's go even further. 11 occasions, 8-3 if you bet they're under, 1.5 wins per season. They're missing expectations, and we have 2 that fit this category. Best bets for me: 1 quarterback I love, but I think he's going to struggle. 1 quarterback I think is not ready for this league and may not be. The Los Angeles Chargers return 1 out of 5 offensive linemen. They do have a new starting center, and they have a new coach. I find it hard for them to be as cohesive, hit the ground running with Brandon Staley in charge. I like them under to win 9.5 games. That's under 9.5 wins for the Chargers. This one I like even better because Jalen Hurts, God bless him. He ran for 300, threw for 100, but I trust my eyes. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I think he's a great college quarterback, like Tim Tebow, like others that have found success early and may get found out later in this league. Their season win total is 7. They returned 2 offensive linemen. I know they're getting some guys back from injury, but that's not exactly cohesion when a guy's been out a year and now he's coming back and he thinks he's an all-pro. So I love that one even more. Eagles, huge turnover, new head coach, unproven, not a fan of their quarterback. I love the season win total Eagles under 7 wins.
What people don't realize is the importance of the offensive line. You talk about Wonderlic, not surprised. They've got to know the whole playbook. They've got to know route trees, blocking schemes. They've got the center doesn't just snap the ball. He's part of the eyes and ears of a quarterback and is very involved in audibling, very involved in looking at pre-snap reads, assisting the quarterback in making decisions and then trying to execute decisions and based on what the defense gives you. The reason I brought up the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken, they have 3 of their 5 back, but I think 3 of 5 are playing different positions this year, meaning or they have someone new in that position. The Pittsburgh Steelers have 5 new players in all 5 positions this year, although I still think they're going to be.
The stories that are affecting the Black community are being covered on the Black Information Network. Not a show or a podcast, BIN is a 24/7 news network covering stories from a Black perspective. Listen to the Black Information Network on the iHeartRadio app and get news for and by the Black community. Anywhere, anytime. Keeping you informed, keeping you engaged. The Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
If you have a phone and the free iHeartRadio app, you have thousands of podcasts on demand that you can binge anytime you want, from anywhere you want to listen. We love music too, so we curated hundreds of playlists to fit any mood or activity. And of course, you can bring your favorite radio stations with you wherever you bring your phone. Only on the iHeartRadio app, #1 for music, radio, and podcasts. All in one app. The free iHeartRadio app goes wherever you go, so you can hear all the things you love. That's exactly why we made it, so you can binge all your favorite podcasts anytime you want. And yes, it's totally free. Add to that being able to stream live radio stations from all over the country and even all over the world, from your favorite local stations to far-off stations that give you a flavor of another city. iHeart has it all. #1 for music, radio, and podcasts, all in one free app.